Have you ever heard of the guy who threw away a laptop that had the key to a Bitcoin wallet on it? Some British guy named James Howells tossed an old laptop into the trash and only later realized that the key to his Bitcoin wallet was saved on its hard drive. By the time he figured it out, the laptop was already buried deep in the city dump. When he first threw it away, the Bitcoin was worth around $8 million. But by 2017, the value had shot up to around $100 million. And now in 2025, those Bitcoins are worth nearly $250 million. Yes, that's billion with a big B. James has offered a huge reward, hired his own private team of tech experts, and even tried to take legal action against city council members he believes might have taken the laptop. But it seems like he's never going to find it again. That means he has to live with the painful reality that he accidentally threw away almost $1 billion. That's harsh, right? And it doesn't get much harsher than that. But when I read about his story, the first thing I thought was, wow, I could actually make money from this crypto stuff. That was back in spring of 2021 when I first started getting into cryptocurrency and learning about the market. I met some cool people online, and then in May 2021, one of my crypto buddies messaged me with a tip he thought I'd like. A few months before we even started talking, he'd come across a crypto coin called Luna. It had jumped from 50 cents to $6 per token. That kind of price jump got his attention. So he started looking into what Luna was all about. And what he found really impressed him. Luna was actually a type of backup coin for something called Terra USD, which was a digital coin designed to always match the value of $1 using algorithms. Let me put that in simpler words. Terra USD was supported by a lot of investors who poured in millions of dollars into the company that created it. That's why it was considered a stable coin. With all that money behind it, the idea was that it wouldn't fail and would stay close to $1 in value. Luna, on the other hand, was a regular crypto coin that could go up or down in value. But since it was tied to Terra USD, it wasn't supposed to crash hard and had a strong chance of going up over time. My friend told me that he waited for a small price drop and bought in when Luna hit $5 per token. Just a little over a month later, that same $5 token was worth more than 4 times as much, around $20.71. After that, the price stayed mostly steady for a bit before it dipped back down to around $5 again that May. That's when he texted me, saying it was the perfect time to buy. He told me he was nearly 100% sure Luna was going to bounce back, especially since it was connected to Terra USD. He was so confident about it that he bought even more tokens before messaging me, and that's what convinced me to jump in. I joked with him saying, well, if this goes bad, we go down together. I had saved up $490 in total, so I bought 100 Luna tokens at $4.81 each. The girl I was seeing at the time thought I'd lost my mind, and my friend Chris, who I've known since high school, also thought it was dumb. When I say Chris was an offline friend, I mean he didn't really follow anything internet related. Sure, he had Instagram and sometimes played Madden online with random people, but other than that, he was more of a car guy than a computer guy. He thought spending nearly $500 on some digital coins was ridiculous, but he wasn't saying that when, by August, Luna's price went from $10 to $20 and then to $30 per token. I remember showing him my crypto wallet and he asked, "Can you just sell it anytime you want?" I explained that I had to find someone willing to buy, but that wasn't hard when the price was rising. Plus, the app I used did most of that work for me. At that point, I could have made a $2,900 profit in less than an hour. That's when Chris started to see that maybe crypto wasn't just a scam. He sat on my couch asking me questions about how it all worked, and I answered the best I could. I didn't try to sugarcoat anything. I told him the truth. It was like gambling, really, but Luna seemed like a rare kind of gamble with more stability than most. A lot of us believed it had strong long-term value. So yes, it was risky, but probably one of the safest bets around at the time. After that, every time Chris and I met up in 2021, he'd ask how my crypto was doing, and each time the news was good. Luna kept climbing, and he'd always joke about giving me money to invest for him so he could make a quick profit. I never thought that was smart. I kept giving him the same advice I was given. Study the market for a while, understand how it works, and then be patient and make your move when the time is right. The best gains come when you buy after a price drop. By the end of 2021, Luna had gone from $30 to $60 and then over $93 per token. It didn't look like it was going to drop anytime soon. I told Chris I'd let him know when I saw a good dip. A little later, after a small drop that didn't seem like a good enough entry point, Luna finally went down to about $45 at the end of January 2022. That's when I called Chris and told him it was the right time to buy in. I helped him set up his crypto wallet and then asked how many tokens he wanted to get. I didn't know what number to expect. Maybe something like what I had done, 50 or 100. But then Chris said he wanted 300 tokens. That surprised me. I thought I was being bold by spending about $4,000. But Chris was dropping close to $14,000, and he wasn't exactly rolling in money. I asked if he was sure, and he was completely confident. I think he trusted what I told him, that Luna always came back stronger after each dip. And sure enough, just over a month later, the price jumped from under $50 to over $100 per token. Chris's investment was now close to $30,000. He had doubled his money, and as you'd imagine, he was thrilled and thankful. By April 2022, Luna reached nearly $120 a token. Chris was so happy with how things were going and kept telling people how I helped him. He was convinced we were going to be rich by the end of the year. I remember one night we were having drinks after a Red Sox game, and he got emotional. He said, "Man, you've changed my life. I can't thank you enough." I tried to be realistic and told him I didn't think we'd be millionaires by the end of the year. My plan was to sell my tokens if they hit $150. I'd still make a huge profit. I suggested he do the same. Then we could wait patiently for the next stablecoin project, invest early again, and maybe repeat the cycle. That was just my plan, but Chris took it as a sure thing. I meant it as a way to ground him, but maybe the drinks were making him more hopeful. He said, "Even if it's not this year, man, we're going to get rich from this. And it's all because of you." I felt really good hearing that. I figured I'd make solid money from my investment, and I'd also helped a friend make money too. Maybe not enough to completely change his life yet, but if we kept at it, the steady income could really grow over time. That was early April, and if things kept going as they had, Luna was expected to hit $200 by the end of 2022. But you know how the saying goes. People make plans, and life has its own ideas. Just days after that emotional night at the bar, when I was feeling great about everything, Luna suddenly dropped. Over the next 2 weeks, it fell from around $120 to about $75. Chris called me, worried, and I gave him the usual advice. Every drop was followed by a rise. That's how Luna always worked. We just needed to wait. And it seemed I was right. Within a day, Luna jumped back from $75 to around $90 per token. After some bouncing around, it leveled out at $95. Everything seemed fine, and people thought the price would keep climbing into May. Then May started, and just as expected, Luna started rising again. Around that time, I got really sick. Something hit me hard. I was stuck in bed, only getting up to go to the bathroom. At one point, I checked my wallet and saw Luna had dropped below $70 per token. But I didn't stress. I believed it would bounce back like always. After that, things get blurry. I remember sleeping for about 13 hours straight once the sickness hit its peak. But then I woke up at around 3:30 a.m. on May 11th, 2022, a date I'll never forget, and realized that everything in my world had suddenly been flipped upside down. After keeping an eye on Luna's price, I figured out that just about an hour after I had passed out, nearly 13 hours earlier, it had dropped from just under $70 to $33 per token. Then only a few hours after that, it fell even further to $16. I watched it fall in real time. $15, $14, then unlucky $13, all right in front of me. I never thought I was the type to faint. I'd been in a serious accident as a teenager, where I saw the inside of my leg when a broken bone tore through the skin. I didn't faint or freak out. I just calmly thought, uh-oh, I need an adult. But that morning, as I stared at my phone, watching Luna's value keep falling, I had to sit back down on my bed just to stay upright. My head was spinning, my chest felt like it was being squeezed, and I kept taking big, slow breaths to stop myself from either puking, passing out, or totally losing it. I started looking at online forums, message boards, and group chats, desperate to find out what was going on. I was hoping I'd find something comforting, maybe a post explaining that it was a glitch or some mistake in the system. But it was the opposite. Luna had totally crashed, and it wasn't bouncing back. I couldn't understand how something that was supposed to be so stable could just collapse. Remember when I said Luna was linked to Terra USD, which was supposed to be tied to the US dollar to keep things steady? Yeah, that turned out to be fake. The people who created it had everyone thinking it would always stay equal to $1. But that was just a trick to get people to invest. In the end, it was a kind of unusual Ponzi scheme. In simple terms, it was a scam, a very well hidden and clever scam that fooled lots of people, including me. But I wasn't the only one who lost money. Chris lost tens of thousands of dollars, and he was furious. One of the first clues I had that something was wrong when I woke up from that long sleep was the crazy number of missed calls and texts from Chris. Like 50 calls and almost 24 texts. He must have gotten an alert about Luna crashing and freaked out while I was passed out. His text started off with things like, "Bro, are you seeing this?" And "Dude, this cannot be happening." Then turned into, "Pick up the effing phone, bro." And "Are you ducking me?" I remember trying to call him back, all panicked, but it just rang until voicemail. I told him to call me back whenever he woke up. His last call had come in about 40 minutes earlier, and it was almost 4 a.m. by then, so I assumed maybe he had finally fallen asleep. But a part of me thought there's no way he was sleeping, not after that crash. And I was right, because maybe 15 to 20 minutes later, my apartment buzzer started going off. I had one of those intercoms with a small screen, so I could see who was there. I already had a feeling who it was. And yep, it was Chris. But he didn't look mad. He looked totally worn out, like all the energy had been drained out of him. I pressed the intercom button and told him to come up. Then I walked to the kitchen, switched on my coffee maker, and grabbed 2 cups from the cupboard. I figured we were in for a long, rough talk. I heard his steps in the hallway and said something like, "Hey man, I'm opening up." But instead of a calm response, I heard a fist slam into the door and Chris shout, "Open the F up." He sounded completely drunk, like really hammered. So instead of opening the door right away, I looked through the peephole. There he was, swaying slightly, barely keeping himself upright. He was drunk, no doubt about it. My hand reached for the latch, but I froze. A thought crossed my mind. What if he got super aggressive, came in and wrecked my place in a drunken rage? I told myself maybe I was just being paranoid. But right then, he slammed his fist on the door again, harder this time, and shouted, "Open the effing door! We need to talk!" That scared feeling rushed back. I started thinking maybe it wasn't safe to let him in, so I told him he should go home and sleep it off. I said we could talk over the phone in the morning and even offered to call him an Uber at my expense, just to make up for missing his calls. I started telling him how sick I had been when suddenly something hit the door so hard it made me jump back. I thought he was trying to kick it down because it came as 3 loud bangs. each one louder and harder than the last. I started yelling at Chris to stop, but he didn't. He gave the door a few more kicks, then started ranting about how he was going to kill me once he broke through the door. I tried explaining what happened to Luna, why it crashed, but it didn't matter. He was yelling too loud to hear anything, and even if he could hear me, I don't think he could understand it in the state he was in. He just kept repeating, "Open the door, James. Open the door." And it didn't even sound like him anymore. It was like he was losing his mind, and it scared the hell out of me. Not just because he was acting like a madman, but also because I realized that I might actually have to defend myself, physically, from one of my closest friends. That thought is one I'll never forget. It still brings tears to my eyes, even now, all these years later. At that moment, I knew I should call the police, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do that to him. Part of me hoped I could calm him down somehow. Another part thought maybe just showing him a knife would shock him into stopping. But I couldn't even bring myself to do that. I just kept saying, "Please, man, don't do this. This isn't who you are." But Chris didn't stop. Not until someone else in the hallway shouted at him to knock it off. I recognized the voice. It was my neighbor down the hall. And I also heard the change in Chris's tone. He suddenly sounded shocked and scared as he replied, Okay, I'll stop." I figured my neighbor must have had a gun pointed at him or something, because when I peeked through the peephole, Chris had his hands up as he backed away from the door. Then I heard my neighbor yell at him to leave, or he'd end up getting shot. Chris seemed to snap out of it for a moment, and I thanked God he didn't have his own gun with him, because I know for a fact that he owns one. We all literally dodged a bullet that night. Just 10 or 20 seconds after my neighbor stepped in, Chris stumbled out of the building, probably heading to his car. I thanked my neighbor again and again. He had already called the cops. They showed up not long after to take a report. I told them the full story from beginning to end, but also said I didn't want to press charges because Chris hadn't been in his right mind. I even explained how much money he'd lost in crypto. When I told the officer the amount, he just said, "How much?" He could hardly believe it. He didn't even really know what crypto was. Before he left, the officer advised me to keep my distance from Chris for a few days. Maybe try a phone call. He might appreciate that I didn't press charges, but definitely don't show up at his place. Otherwise, I might end up staring down the barrel of a gun. I tried calling, but he never answered. I sent texts, but he didn't reply. I even messaged him on Instagram, and he blocked me. Then I asked his girlfriend and some mutual friends to pass along messages, but I never got a response. I thought maybe he'd be mad for a few days, maybe a week or two at most. I figured eventually he'd realize it wasn't my fault, but sadly that never happened. To him, I was either dumb enough to lose all his money or smart enough to steal it in some kind of scam. Either way, he was done with me. At the time, I didn't realize it, but that night, when he yelled at me through the door, that was the last time we ever spoke, and that marked the end of my crypto journey. I didn't throw away a laptop with almost $1 billion on it, but I did lose a friend. And friendships, those are worth more than any amount of money. Born on September 20th, 1961, in Baltimore, Maryland, Sharon Rena Lotka was the oldest of 4 daughters born to Mr. and Mrs. Abraham J. Denberg. When she was younger, she sang at Beth Tilo Synagogue in nearby Pikesville and was active in her high school sports and choir groups. People who knew her described her as very down-to-earth and normal. After she graduated in 1979, she started dating a construction worker named Victor Lyatka. Sharon's Orthodox Jewish parents didn't fully support the relationship, but she didn't let that stop her. In 1990, she moved into Victor's home in Hampstead, and they got married the following year. By 1995, they were living in Ellicott City, and Sharon started a home-based online business to make some extra money. Her first project, called House of Dion, sold mail-order home decor guides for $7 each. An ad on the website said, "Home decorating secrets from fancy homes in New England," and Hollywood can now be yours. Never before published, easy and fast ways to decorate your home. Sharon was so good at advertising that she started selling her writing skills for $50 per ad under the name Classified Concepts. At first, Victor wasn't sure people could really make money on the internet, but he was both proud and surprised at how successful Sharon became. He encouraged her to keep going, and as time passed, Sharon spent more and more time working online. Besides writing ads and selling home guides, Sharon also started managing the sales departments for several websites. Sharon began offering psychic readings to users through her websites. She also made deals to earn a portion of sales from other services, including ones that used premium rate phone numbers, which she promoted online. In just a few months, she turned their home computer into a profitable business, clearly seeing how powerful the internet could be for making money. But sadly, in her efforts to support her family, Sharon started drifting into the darker corners of the web. Just kidding about the Let's Read YouTube channel part. But really, she did start exploring the darker parts of the internet to keep her income growing. Even in the early days of the internet, adult content was already a strong presence. It offered wide reach and easy ways for people to pay. Sharon saw the big demand for online adult material and realized she could profit from it. With her strong background in marketing, she offered her skills to adult content sellers and quickly became successful again. But soon Sharon noticed something else. People paid more money for the more extreme stuff. The more intense the content was, especially things showing people being tied up, hypnotized, or knocked out, the more people were willing to pay. Some paid 2 or 3 times more than those who wanted basic content. To Sharon, it made perfect sense. She could earn triple for the same effort. So under the fake name Nancy Carlson, she boosted her income again. Her husband didn't seem to mind either. As Sharon went deeper into strange online areas, she also began selling her underwear. That's when things started to shift, not just professionally, but personally. The name Nancy Carlson became more than just a screen name. She created a whole character around it. Sharon started joining adult chat rooms where she acted like a 300-pound dominatrix who had been in several adult movies. People believed she offered special chat sessions for money, which added even more to her earnings. But at some point, things got darker. Sharon started posting ads online saying her biggest fantasy was to be kidnapped, tortured, and killed by someone in a mask. Her posts were written in such a believable way that they got a lot of attention. Some people responded, offering to make her fantasy come true. Others, like a user named Tanith, thought she was going too far. Tanith claimed to be an online activist and seemed genuinely concerned about Sharon's mental health. He gently warned her that she might face serious consequences. But Sharon didn't say it was just a business strategy or a harmless fantasy. Instead, she told him, "I want the real thing. I did not ask for you to preach to me." Then on the morning of Sunday, October 13th, 1996, Sharon told her husband she was going to Georgia to meet some old friends. He wished her well and went on with his day, not realizing Sharon had different plans. Instead of heading south, she drove about 45 minutes to Baltimore's Pennsylvania station and then made her way to Charlotte, North Carolina, arriving there around 8:45 p.m. At about the same time, her husband found a handwritten note on the kitchen table. It's unclear what exactly the note said, but Sharon asked him not to look for her. She also wrote, "If my body's never retrieved, don't worry. Know that I'm at peace." Her husband, Victor, rushed to contact the police, knowing his wife might be in danger. But it was already too late. Sharon had already met up with the man she made a terrible deal with, Robert Glass. For nearly 16 years, Robert Frederick Glass had lived a quiet life, working as a computer technician for a local government office in Catawba County. He was married to a woman named Sherry, and they had 3 children together. Their marriage lasted for 14 years, but everything changed in May 1996. That's when Sherry used her husband's computer and found several emails that she later described as disturbing and violent. Robert had been using names like Toyman and Slowand to visit disturbing chat rooms for years. But he wasn't just chatting with people. He seemed to enjoy writing about hurting others in a way that made it seem very real. Sherry quickly filed for divorce, and because of the horrible nature of what she found, Robert lost access to his kids. This was devastating for him, but instead of getting help or trying to live better, he threw himself even deeper into his dark online habits. Over the next few months, Robert became more and more obsessed with fantasies involving pain and death. Then in August of 1996, he came across one of Sharon's posts. That's when the two began a disturbing and obsessive online relationship. In just over a month, they exchanged 900 pages of emails. Eventually, they made a terrifying plan. They would meet, and after a few days together, Robert would end Sharon's life. When Victor reported his wife missing, investigators began searching Sharon's computer. That's when they discovered her emails with Robert Glass. Maryland detectives contacted police in North Carolina, and Robert's home was put under watch. Officers kept an eye on the house for 24 hours, but they didn't see any sign of Sharon. Then on October 25th, a judge gave permission for a full search of Robert's house. Police went in and found several of Sharon's things inside, as well as items like bondage gear and drug-related items. They also found a .357 Magnum handgun and computer disks that appeared to have illegal content involving minors. But the worst discovery came when they searched the backyard. About 75 feet from the house, they found body parts buried in the dirt. These remains belonged to Sharon Liotka. At the time, Robert was at work when he was arrested. He was charged with first-degree murder and locked up without bail in Caldwell County Jail. He later admitted guilt to reduced charges of manslaughter and exploitation on January 27, 2000. He was given a prison sentence of 3 to 6 years at Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution. He also got another 27 months added for separate federal charges related to child exploitation, which would be served after his first sentence ended. During a prison interview, Robert said he did carry out Sharon's torture fantasy, but claimed her death wasn't planned. "I don't know how much I pulled the rope," he said, "but I never wanted to kill her." North Carolina's chief medical examiner, John Butts, believed Robert's claim that the choking may have been accidental, but the police disagreed. They said the killing was clearly on purpose, and with 900 pages of emails between Robert and Sharon, they had plenty of proof that it was all planned in advance. Sharon's case became the first one where someone was arrested mainly because of email evidence. Afterward, the story made major headlines. Most news outlets focused on how dangerous it can be to meet strangers from the internet. Many people even asked for stricter online rules to stop such tragedies from happening again. But Scott Bradner, a tech consultant from Harvard University, strongly disagreed. He said blaming the technology itself was wrong. "It's the critics of progress who always try to say new tools are evil," he said. Sharon's story might seem like a warning about the risks of spending too much time online, but her type of problem isn't a new one. Back in September 1791, in London, a Czech composer named Francis Scutara had a strange encounter. He hired a sex worker named Susanna Hill and later asked her to castrate him. She refused, but she did agree to strangle him during sex. After they were done, he ended up dead. This was one of the earliest known cases of what we now call erotic asphyxiation. Susanna Hill was arrested and put on trial for his death, but on September 16th, the jury believed her story and found her not guilty. Robert Glass, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He stayed in prison at Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution in North Carolina and seemed to be a model prisoner for the next 2 years. He looked like he was filled with regret and guilt. That weight seemed to grow heavier over time, and on February 20th, 2002, just 2 weeks before he was set to be released, Robert suffered a serious heart attack. He was rushed to Spruce Pine Community Hospital, but was pronounced dead at 1:30 a.m. the next morning. His death closed one of the most disturbing cases in the history of online crime and showed what can happen when dangerous fantasies meet real-life consequences. In the early morning hours of a cool September day in 1998, the quiet English town of Charbury in Oxfordshire was suddenly filled with the sound of police vans pulling up to a small 2-story house on Crabber Villas. The old Victorian house with chipped paint and a tiny front yard was the last place anyone had seen their target. According to police intel, he lived alone and was extremely cautious. He kept weird hours, used different ways to come and go, and always seemed to think someone was following him. A K-9 unit waited nearby in case he tried to escape through the backyard, which backed into a thick forest just outside town. The raid had been carefully planned for 5 a.m., thanks to a tip from the FBI. That early hour meant only local farmers would be awake and about. The local police had spent months gathering clues, private emails, computer data, all of it pointed to this house and to its resident being part of a massive online group involved in child abuse. At 4:55 a.m., 12 officers in tactical gear got into position outside the house. One knocked hard on the door and shouted, "Police! Open the door now!" When no one responded, they used a battering ram to break it open and rushed inside. The downstairs was a mess. Piles of old newspapers, dirty dishes, and the strong smell of smoke. Using flashlights, officers searched the living room and kitchen, checking every corner. Upstairs, they found 28-year-old Ian Baldock in a back room, just waking up and reaching for his jacket. "Hands up, don't move!" an officer yelled. Baldock froze, pale and stunned by the light. He knew it was over. By 6:30 a.m., with the sun barely rising, Baldock was being taken away in a police van. Curious neighbors peeked out their windows, talking about the man they barely knew. Someone quiet and strange who rarely visited local pubs like Ye Old Three Horseshoes. The street, now filled with police tape and officers guarding the home, was a far cry from its usual peace. Forensics teams arrived to take Baldock's computer. His arrest was just the first step in what would become a huge international operation against one of the worst child exploitation rings in the world. This was the beginning of Operation Cathedral. Launched in 1998, it became a major moment in the fight against child abuse on the internet. Its main target was the Wonderland Club, a hidden online group of people involved in sharing illegal content involving children. The name, borrowed from the book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, was a disguise for a truly horrific organization. The members weren't just random criminals. They formed a well-organized global group that produced, collected, and traded this illegal content on a massive scale. The operation involved police forces from many countries and helped show how complicated online crime could be, especially when the internet was still new. It all started in 1996 in the US during an unrelated FBI case involving cybercrime. That's when the FBI found signs of a huge network involved in online child abuse. This discovery became part of the FBI's Innocent Images program, which aimed to tackle online child exploitation. As they looked deeper, they found the Wonderland Club, a highly organized international group. Joining the Wonderland Club wasn't easy. New members had to submit at least 10,000 images of abuse, images that weren't already known to the group. This rule meant the collection kept growing rapidly, turning into one of the biggest libraries of illegal content ever seen. Members used secret online tools to hide their identities and keep their actions hidden. The club had a ranking system where members who provided more material or rare content were given access to even worse stuff. Later, it was revealed that the group had members in at least 14 different countries. Because of how widespread it was, the FBI reached out to international partners to help. The UK's National Crime Agency worked closely with the FBI and others to gather information and plan a large, coordinated takedown. This teamwork was necessary because the internet had no borders and no single country could stop the problem alone. One big problem investigators faced was how well the Wonderland Club hid its tracks. Members used tools to remove personal details from emails and used strong encryption to protect everything they shared. They also avoided using one main server. Instead, they sent material directly to each other using peer-to-peer sharing. To get around these hurdles, police used both old-school detective work and the latest computer technology. Undercover officers pretended to be new members to gain access and collect evidence. But it was risky. One mistake and the whole group might disappear, going even deeper into the web where they'd be harder to find. Another challenge was the huge amount of data they had to sort through. The club's collection had over 250,000 images and nearly 1,800 videos. Police needed special tools and trained teams to sort through it all, identify victims, and track down the people involved. This also meant building new software to help match faces and images with known cases. But even with good intentions, the investigation brought up serious ethical issues. Undercover agents sometimes had to look at or share illegal content to gain trust and build a case. That raised the question, were they also participating in the crime, even if it was to stop it? To manage this, strict rules were put in place. Officers had to follow tight procedures, always focusing on finding and helping victims. But the debate over right and wrong in such investigations remains, bringing to mind a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche: "He who fights with monsters should be careful not to become one. And if you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back into you." After 2 years of careful work, Operation Cathedral came to a head on September 2nd, 1998. Police in 13 countries, including the UK, US, Australia, Germany, and Italy, carried out surprise raids at the same time to stop the club members from warning each other. Over 100 people were arrested, and police collected a huge amount of digital evidence: computers, hard drives, and disks. One of the most notable arrests was a British man named Gary Salt. He turned out to be a major player in the club and had a large stash of illegal content. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In the US, the FBI caught a man in California who had over 100,000 illegal images on his computer. Thankfully, the raids also helped identify real children who had been hurt, including a 10-year-old girl from America who was rescued because her images were found with one of the suspects. This showed that Operation Cathedral didn't just break up a dangerous network, it also saved lives. Even though the operation was a big win, the results in court varied by country. In the UK, several members were convicted and given long sentences. Gary Salt got 12 years, but another man named David Hines only got 30 months. In the US, penalties were usually harsher, with some people getting up to 20 years for even minor involvement, but not every arrest led to jail time. In some cases, not enough evidence or legal problems caused charges to be dropped. Still, there was a good side to this. It revealed weak spots in the law, especially in countries where rules about online abuse were outdated or not strong enough. This led to calls for tougher laws and better international teamwork to fight online child abuse. Slowly, these gaps in the system are being closed. Operation Cathedral changed how law enforcement works. It became the blueprint for other big efforts, like Operation Avalanche in 2001 and Operation Ore in 2002, which went after similar crimes. Some countries launched new programs to make the internet safer, including public education campaigns and tools to block harmful sites. The operation also made more people aware of how dangerous the internet can be, especially for kids, and showed how important it is to teach children and parents how to stay safe online. By bringing down the Wonderland Club, Police didn't just put criminals behind bars, they also helped victims and stopped future harm. The impact of the operation continues today, reminding us how much progress has been made and how much work still needs to be done. As the internet keeps changing, the ways we protect people, especially kids, have to change too. But with hard work, teamwork, and new ideas, even the most hidden and complex criminal groups can be stopped.